You've lost again. As the scale hits the table and the cards are taken from the board, you hear a voice. More gold for me, it says. From across the table, hands begin to reach towards you until... Before this video starts, if you haven't already played Inscryption yet, and you might play it in the future, buy and play it before watching this video. You won't regret playing it blind. Inscryption's a fairly new game at the time of making this video. It was released on the 19th of October 2021, developed by Daniel Mullins Games and published by Devolver Digital. The game is an atmospheric, unsettling deck-building based card game, taking place within a cabin. While this is mostly true, it hides so much more of the gameplay, story events, and even the real-life ARG elements that are connected to it. I won't be going into the game's full-on, in-depth lore and ARG. Instead, I'll mainly just be talking about what, in my opinion, makes this game so good. I might talk about the ARG in the future, alongside the Endless mode when it's completed. The game starts with a retro menu screen, with all options accessible except for the new game icon, pretty much forcing the player to select continue. Upon using the continue icon, the player is met with a table surrounded by darkness. A pair of eyes illuminated in the dark slowly creep open. The great thing about this is that you have no idea what's happening here, or what's happened here before. You've been dropped into the deep end of this universe, and just have to play along, just like the character. The player eventually encounters a total of 3 talking cards. The Stoat, the Stinkbug, and the Stunted Wolf. All of them want your help to get out of the cabin, alluding to the outside world. Apart from the main game, the cabin around you has multiple puzzles that you can solve. Some of these puzzles are done over consecutive runs, require knowledge of the game, or can be solved through clues around the cabin. On the board comes multiple other spaces that help you build or improve your deck, helping you stand a better chance of survival during encounters, such as sacrificial altars, giving one card another card's ability, an extra card space, and backpack spaces. I know he calls it a sack, but I'm not calling it a sack space. Successfully deciding which spaces you should go with when paths diverge can usually help you win runs. There is one item that you need to unlock that progresses the story further. A knife. Obtaining this knife eventually leads to finding the third and final talking card. Upon using this new item within a fight, results in you gorge your eye out and put it on the scale, dealing a lot of damage. After the fight, you're given a selection from a box of eyes. You can choose one eye to put into your empty socket. 2 notable eye choices are the Magic Eye and the Goat's Eye. The Magic Eye lets you see words and hints around the room, helping you advance with the puzzles and story. The Goat Eye just makes goats look like this. I don't know why. Apart from the knife, more unlockable items are mostly found in the oil painting. Replicating what set of cards shows mid-fight opens the painting, letting the player reach in and take whatever item is displayed. Apart from the totem fights, which buff the opponent's cards, there are boss fights at the end of each map. The special twist for these bosses is that they will always have 2 lives, with your lives always reduced to 1. Certain bosses even have their own unique abilities, which can present their own challenges. At the end of every map, you can encounter either the Prospector, Angler, or the Trapper/Trader. Apart from their fitting abilities, even their theme songs when you enter battle with them fit perfectly. At the very end of your journey, you're met with the final boss. Leshy. The design of Leshy comes from Slavic mythology. Making Leshy, a forest deity in said mythology, the final boss, is just another great touch to the overall theme. To start the final battle against Leshy, he gives himself a 3rd life, instantly giving this boss a more threatening presence. Apart from being the final obstacle in your path, it's a true test to see if you're worthy of winning. Throughout the battle, he uses masks from previous bosses and uses their abilities, their themes combining with Leshy's theme when they're activated. Throughout the game, as the player dies, they can make death cards, which by Leshy's 2nd life, he uses against you. During Leshy's last life, he takes a photo of the moon behind him, turning it into a card. The first time Leshy is defeated, the player hears the following voice from the start of the game.
Oh my, I think I just beat him! Oh.
This is our first look into more lore and backstory to the game's events, showing more of the world outside of the game. Whether the player was active enough to find the film roll by completing the puzzles around the cabin depends on how the fight's aftermath goes. If you didn't get the film roll, Leshy turns you into a card once again, this time bearing a ribbon, restarting you into another run. If you did get the film roll, your player inserts it into the camera before Leshy can get it, causing the following sequence. Everything's silent now, the only noise coming from the object flickering in the center of the room, the new game icon. Once the player grabs the icon, the space becomes dark, completely devoid of light and sound. The new game icon glitches into place upon going back to the main menu. Selecting it wipes your previous data and begins Act 2. A retro-styled intro sequence plays, introducing the world, the 4 scribes, and their methods of creating cards, beginning the second part of the game. The style is completely different now, which comes pretty out of left field, but that's what makes this great. Some cards from before are still around, but they're mixed in with brand new cards. There are 4 types of cards overall in this game, each belonging to their respective scribe. Leshy's cards. Usually playing these cards require a blood sacrifice, like in the previous act. Grimora's cards usually rely on skeletons, which perish on their first turn, giving the player bones to play their other dead cards. PO3's cards require energy to play. The energy meter shows how much energy you can spend on that turn. Usually a bit more strategy and card placement is needed. And finally, Magnificus's cards require mox or gems. Most cards here require mox cards to be on the board. All of these card types can be mixed into a custom deck. If used right, they can all work really well off of each other. Throughout this act, you go to each temple, defeating 3 subordinates per temple, then proceeding to fight that temple's respective scribe. Like in the previous act, each boss fight song fits very accordingly to their scribe. PO3 seems to have their last subordinate take something out of the water, going down the construction line and being scanned into a card. There's a few secret rooms and interactions in this part of the game, like a Kraken card that relates to the tentacle cards from Act 1, or even disturbing hidden rooms connected to the old data, the malignant force that breathes life into the game. You can interact with an NPC named the Bone Lord, which also appears in Act 3. They clearly indicate that they know a lot about the old data and its secrets. After beating every scribe, you're faced with the choice of who to replace. This is for nothing. Whoever you choose, PO3 replaces them and begins the final fight. The fight is quickly cut short though by the glitched card that was created before. This time, Peer 3's taken over, starting your new journey to perform the Great Transcendence, a very vague goal that most people are just going to forget until the end. This new game revolves around the energy bar from Act 2, using 5 lanes instead of 4. This act makes it clear that Leshy and Peer 3 have different ideas on how their game should be. Leshy has a more story-based game, but sometimes has unfair encounters, while Peer 3 expands the space in which you can play your cards, focusing more on strategy and gameplay. When Peer 3 tells his story, it's far less engaging than Leshy's form of storytelling. This is done on purpose to differentiate the two, and I love that. Instead of 3 worlds where you travel linearly, Peer 3 has a somewhat exploration-based campaign, a recreation of Act 2's map, basing its theme on a robot wasteland, creatively named Botopia. When you're defeated in Botopia, you don't reset your progress like in Leshy's game. Instead, you're taken to a checkpoint. This, along with a few other things, shows that Peer 3 doesn't exactly have the patience to go through everything all over again. Each scribe has been replaced with a loose robotic creation in their respective temples, all with their own variation of the same theme, except for the boss in Peer 3's place. The 4 Uberbots, the photographer, the archivist, the painter, and Golly, all have their own unique game rule to their boss fights. In the photographer's boss fight, you can take pictures of the board, letting the player revert the board to the state it was when you took the photo. The painter lets the player decide its ability, all somewhat equal to each other, but not so that you can find one that's easier. The archivist genuinely got terrifying for me. You choose real files from your actual computer upon killing cards that let you do so, letting the size of the file help tip the scale. You choose a file from past its first life, making a card that, quote unquote, deletes that file if that card dies. Peer 3 even breaks character to tell you is serious. If the card does die, a text file is placed with the file, saying, at least, I tried to delete it, but it seems my powers of file access do not extend that far. Play by the rules you agreed to. Delete it yourself. Have an ounce of respect for the rules. Come on. If you do delete the file in question, Peer 3 remarks about it. You can even get references in this fight to other past Daniel Mellon's games by using exe files. Golly, for me, is usually the last faced out of all the 4. This theory is floating around saying Golly is a repressed beta personality for Peer 3, but unless there's proof that I haven't seen yet, it's up to speculation. Golly has a very playful personality, unlike the other Uberbots, which are all very robotic in comparison. Peer 3 seems to dislike Golly as well, even to the point of cutting her off as soon as you beat her. There is a secret boss in this act, the mycologists. They've appeared in every act. Originally, one could assume they're just another character played by Leshy. Then you can find them in Act 2, giving them cards to experiment on. Eventually, you can get a purple key from them that's used in Act 3. Peer 3 didn't even plan for this boss to be in the game. The mycologists completely take over Peer 3, showing their faces on his screen. Realistic faces. Once again, they begin talking about experiments like they have for the entire game. Depending on your deck and experience, this fight can be really difficult. When you beat them, they play 2 cards and mix them together, the name turning into a jumble of numbers. They either created or reassembled a fragment of the old data. You begin to return to the start to perform the Great Transcendence. The Peer 3 stops you for a second, mentioning one of the cameras is broken, telling you to fix it. Once the player enters the dredging room, it's pitch black until the wick of a candle is lit, revealing the other 3 scribes standing amongst each other, telling the player to distract Peer 3 a little longer. Finally, you return to the starting point of Botopia, and Peer 3 begins to monologue on how he used the Uberbot bosses to get the game connected to your PC and ready to upload to the internet. As Peer 3 begins to upload, the camera pans up to show Leshy's eyes behind him. While he took off the head of Peer 3, some people have speculated that he still uploads the game, like disconnecting a monitor from a PC. It doesn't stop anything. Whilst Leshy and Magnificus tell the player to restart the game again, Grimora grabs a file, giving her access to the computer and its contents. After falling through the floor, the game loads a new, darkened area. You place 3 nameplates into a gravestone and come face to face with Grimora. You get to play a bit of her game, which is pretty fun for how little we get to play. In her rulebook, there's a sigil that never appears and is probably out there for a joke, which lets a card gain power for every time you utter Bloody Mary into your microphone. If you make it to the end, Grimora becomes pretty excited to get into a boss fight, which is cut pretty short, so she offers to end everything with a handshake before she's deleted. Everything fades back in. You can see Leshy's table, with Leshy opening his eyes. Surprised that he's not deleted yet, he beckons for one last game. Throughout Act 1, losing lives or losing the game would sometimes come with Leshy making a little bit of a harsh remark, saying pity or when will a worthy challenger appear. This time, Leshy's congratulating the player on their deck and thanking them for the time they spent playing his game. Eventually, the scale tips to one side, deleting it. Not many turns later, the bell deletes, with everything else following not long after. Leshy finishes everything up when he reaches his hand out for a handshake, accepting of his fate. The final remaining scribe, Magnificus, sitting alone in a blank space with what little rubble from his tower deleting around him. He takes a moment to beg Luke to eject the disc, but quickly gives up, challenging him to his final duel. The music here is absolutely phenomenal, starting as a bit more of a forced version of his original theme from Act 2, as it gets closer to the end, sounding more corrupted and broken. Even the original instruments get replaced, as if they'd been deleted, and replaced with new instruments to keep the fight going. While a lot of people who played this freaked out about the dual disc and maybe even the Exodia reference in the rulebook, it's a tragic end for the characters. Even more so when the old data, the reason Grimora initiated the deletion, shows to have immunity to it being erased. Eventually, at the end of it all but you and Magnificus remain, crawling towards you in an attempt to shake your hand, but being deleted before you can get close enough. All that's left is a blank screen, eventually spinning out our character from Act 2 to walk around, eventually talking to the woodcarver, saying not to access the old data, the only thing that remains.
Hey Luke, this is Herman from the Herald, just following up after the message you left me this morning. You have time to talk right now?
Yes, thank you so much for getting back to me.
No problem, Luke. If I understand you correctly, you've got some video footage that might expose some malpractice on the part of a game publisher, GameSpuna?
Yes, that's right. Firstly, I have a game of theirs that took control of my PC for a bit, which can't be legal, and then this woman from the company came to my house, and she...
Okay, hold on a second. Let me just get my pen and pad here, okay. Okay, so you have a game of theirs that took, was it a virus or something?
I told you!
I obviously didn't get to everything, but I mainly focused on summarizing the story and some great things about the game itself. If all my praises weren't clear enough throughout the video, I'm going to summarize everything I think is good about the game here. But now, you have context. Bosses and characters are unique, it's very meta with its use of the real world, it's a horror-themed card game that's actually done well, a very unique and distinguishable style, it offers great replayability, interacting with the world around you doesn't pull you out of the experience, all story and info isn't spoon-fed to the player, genuinely terrifying moments, the way some puzzles interact with the card game or the world around you, secret rooms in Act 2 hinting towards the old data, more story elements for players who seek it, giving less your character arc, there are funny rulebook secrets, Magnificus's theme. That's all I wrote, I just really like that song. Presents a genuine challenge, and that's it, that's all I can think of at the moment. Thank you for watching this video so far. It's been a bit of an idea that I've had to make a video essay like this, so I'm glad you've watched to the end. Assuming you haven't skipped to the end just to see what I say at the end. In the future, I might do more videos like this, not just an expansion to this video, but maybe I might talk about other games. As I've said, it's a different type of video that I'm trying to do here, so I'm still getting used to it. It's maybe even more obvious when this took way longer than it should have. Anyway, once again, thank you so much for watching, it means a lot to me, and have a good day or night.